All right, let's dive in. We're taking a close look at how Indonesia's upcoming elections for governors, regents, and mayors are going to play out.
You mean all those campaign signs we'll be seeing soon?
Exactly. We're focusing on the campaign rules, the official playbook, if you will, straight from the source.
The Indonesian Election Commission.
The one and only in their KPU regulation number 13 of 2024.
So basically, this deep dive is giving our listeners a sneak peek behind the scenes.
Think of it as your guide to understanding what's allowed, what's not, and how you can expect candidates to reach out to you.
Sounds useful, especially with all the different levels of government involved. So where do we start?
Let's start with the when. When can candidates actually hit the ground running? When does it all begin?
Officially, the campaign period begins 3 days after they announce the candidates.
Okay, so when is that for this election?
Mark your calendars for Wednesday, September 25th, 2024. That's when the campaign season kicks off, and it runs all the way until Saturday, November 23rd, 2024.
Got it. Wednesday, September 25th to Saturday, November 23rd. But then, right after that, it goes quiet.
Precisely. It enters what's called the quiet period.
What exactly does that mean, quiet period?
Well, it's from Sunday, November 24th to Tuesday, November 26th. No more campaigning allowed during that time.
Ah, so everyone gets a break before the big day.
A moment of reflection, you could say.
All right, makes sense. So during that campaign period, who exactly is out there trying to win your vote? Who can campaign?
Oh, it's more than just the candidates themselves.
Is it?
Yeah, you've got participating political parties
Of course.
and the candidates they've nominated, naturally, but also any joint secretariats those parties might form.
I see.
Then there are the official campaign teams that the candidates put together.
Right.
And even registered supporters and volunteers, as long as they're officially registered.
Wow, that's a lot of people potentially involved.
It can be a pretty big operation.
So what are they allowed to tell you? What can they say in their campaign materials?
First and foremost, they have to present the candidate's vision and mission, their big picture ideas.
Okay. And what else?
And here's the catch. It has to be in line with the region's long-term development plans.
Interesting. So it can't just be some pie-in-the-sky ideas. It has to actually fit into the existing plan.
Exactly. They also have to outline their specific programs, the things they want to get done if they're elected.
So they have to show you the how, not just the what.
Yeah, you've got it.
Are there any limits on what they can actually say or show in their materials?
Oh, definitely. It's not a free-for-all. Everything they put out there has to align with what are called Pancasila.
Pancasila, those are Indonesia's core principles.
That's right. They're non-negotiables. Plus, they've got to uphold the 1945 Constitution, obviously.
Of course, got to follow the law of the land.
Absolutely. And they have to respect national identity and religious values.
It sounds like they have to be pretty careful.
They do.
Mm-hmm.
It's really about respecting the country's diverse population.
Mm-hmm.
So personal attacks are definitely out.
Makes sense.
And anything designed to provoke or stir up trouble, that's a no-go.
So how are candidates and their teams actually going to get their messages to you? What methods are allowed?
They've got a few options.
Like what?
They can have meetings, but with limits on the number of people. Like at the provincial level, you're looking at a max of 2,000 attendees.
Okay, 2,000 people at the provincial level.
For a regency or city, it's 1,000.
Okay, smaller scale for the local level.
Exactly. They can also have these more intimate face-to-face meetings and dialogues with voters.
I can see how that would be effective.
It's a way to connect directly.
All right, so big rallies and smaller, more personal gatherings. What else?
You'll definitely see public debates.
Ah, yes, the classic debate.
Those are facilitated by the KPU, and they can have a maximum of 3 of those.
Only 3.
Yeah, but I think those can be really informative for voters.
It's a chance to see the candidates side by side answering the same questions.
Exactly.
What other ways can candidates reach out?
They can distribute printed materials like those leaflets and brochures you see everywhere.
Yeah, those are hard to miss.
Plus posters.
Posters, banners, all that good stuff.
You got it. And here's an interesting thing.
What's that?
The KPU, they actually help print those basic materials.
Really? They're involved in that?
Yep, they print up to the total number of registered voters.
Wow.
They want to make sure everyone has access to at least the basic information about each candidate.
So regardless of how much money a campaign has, everyone gets a fair shot.
Exactly.
What about campaign props, like those big banners you see hanging across the street?
Those are allowed too, things like banners and billboards.
I figured as much.
But the KPU, they coordinate with the local government to figure out where those things can actually go.
So it's not just a free-for-all, putting them wherever you want?
Nope, there are designated spots.
What about media? Are we talking TV ads, radio spots, all that.
Oh, definitely. They could do ads in print and electronic media. Both are fair game.
I imagine that can get expensive.
It can. But here's the thing. The KPU, they actually organize the ad slots.
So it's not just a bidding war to get the best time slots.
Not exactly. The campaigns themselves, they fund the production of the ads, but there are limits on how much they can spend.
So there are some checks and balances in place.
There are. Now, besides all that, there are other activities they could do, as long as they don't break any rules.
Interesting. So some flexibility within the guidelines, like what?
Rallies are allowed, but there are limits on how many they can hold.
So they can't just have a rally every day.
Nope. And then there's social media, of course.
Ah, yes, social media. Gotta have that these days.
They can have up to 20 accounts on each platform, but they have to register those with the KPU.
So they can't just create a bunch of anonymous accounts to spread their message?
No, they got to be transparent about it.
Yeah.
And then online ads, they're limited to one banner per verified online news outlet.
Makes sense. So lots of options, but all with specific rules attached.
That seems to be the theme here.
It does.
Yeah.
Now let's flip the script. We've talked about what campaigns can do. What about what they absolutely can't do? What are the big no-nos?
Okay, well, first off, no campaigning against those core national principles.
Makes sense. Those are sacred.
Exactly. And no targeting specific groups in a negative way. No hate speech or discrimination.
Obviously.
Another big one, they can't use government facilities or budgets for their campaigns.
So no using their office for campaign work.
Nope, that's a conflict of interest. The only exception is for security details if the candidate is a state official.
Okay, so their bodyguards can still do their job.
That's right. And then, generally, places of worship are off limits for campaigning.
Keeping religion and politics separate.
Right. And the same goes for schools. No campaigning in educational institutions, although universities have some specific exceptions.
Okay, so there's some nuance there.
Yeah, a bit more flexibility in a university setting, and you won't be seeing any parades on public roads.
No big campaign parades.
Nope, those are no-go. And of course, campaigning outside of the official KPU schedule is strictly forbidden.
So, gotta play by the KPU's calendar.
You do. And it goes without saying, bribing voters or election officials, that's completely illegal.
No surprises there.
There are also rules about where you can put campaign materials. You can't just plaster them everywhere.
So, like, religious sites are probably off limits.
Exactly. No campaign posters in places of worship, hospitals, or schools.
Got it.
And there are restrictions near government buildings, main roads, public infrastructure, even parks.
So they really want to keep public spaces relatively free of campaign clutter.
It seems like it. And one last thing.
What's that?
If an incumbent, someone already in office, is running for re-election, they have to take mandatory leave during the campaign period.
Interesting. So they can't use their position to give themselves an advantage.
Nope. Got to level the playing field.
So for our listeners, what's the takeaway from all of this? What's the big picture here?
Well, I'd say this KPU regulation is trying to set up a really clear structure for these elections.
To make things fair.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. Fair and ethical and organized.
So everyone knows the rules of the game.
Precisely. And it's important for both sides, the candidates and the voters.
So we can all understand what's going on and why.
That's the idea.
And what about you? What really stood out to you in all of this?
Honestly, the fact that the KPU helps print basic campaign materials up to the number of registered voters, that's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, that's quite a commitment to making sure information is accessible.
It really shows they're trying to make sure all voters have at least a basic understanding of who's running.
So it's not just about who has the most money to spend on fancy campaigns.
Exactly.
So why should our listeners care about all this? Why is this important for them?
Because these rules, they shape the entire campaign experience in your area.
You mean what we see and hear from the candidates?
Yeah, the information you get, the events that happen, it's all influenced by these regulations.
And ultimately, it affects our ability to make an informed decision on Election Day.
That's the key.
Absolutely. Now, here's something for everyone to think about, something we haven't really discussed. With all these detailed rules, how might that affect the more spontaneous grassroots efforts of different campaigns?
That's a good question.
Could it make things too rigid, stifle creativity? And are there any unintended consequences that might come from trying to standardize the whole process so tightly? Something to consider as we watch the campaigns unfold.
Definitely food for thought.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.